to May First Friday for the Cape Cod Technology Council. I can't believe it's May already. This year's going by very quickly. We've got a great presenter today, Alysia Ordway from XR Terra. Looking very much forward to hearing about that. I do want to give you an update on events that are happening this month and the beginning of next. Next week is our annual meeting on Wednesday, May 12th at 5:30 p.m. It'll be relatively short, an hour or less. Should be fun. We're going to introduce our new board members. We'll have a vote and introduce our new board members. And we've got Dorothy Severies from Cape Cod 5 is going to give us a keynote address, a look back and a look ahead, kind of tie in together some of the experiences that we've all had this year. So very much looking forward to that. Dorothy, of course, is an excellent speaker. And on Friday, May 21st, we have our Q&A, coffee Q&A. Jay Sheehan, musician, recording engineer, is going to be talking about the digital recording revolution that's happened over the past year as all of us musicians are trying to figure out how to record from home and collaborate with each other. So a lot has happened and how that's going to impact the future. Our infrastructure committee meeting with Gene Curry will be on May 19th. That is an open meeting. Anyone is welcome to attend, talking about broadband, the electric grid, and other infrastructure issues here in the region. And on Friday, June 4th, our June 1st Friday, we've got Mike Kelleher. He's the executive director of the Australian International Screen Foundation. He's going to be zooming in from Australia. Let's hope that goes well. And because of the time difference, we're going to be starting that at 10 a.m. as opposed to 8 a.m. for First Friday. I think it's a more civilized hour, but we'll see how that goes for some of you who are might impact your schedule. He's going to be talking about digital project management. Before he was with the Film Screen Festival, he was with CNN and worked on their digital product management, bringing like iOS apps to market, etc. So that should be a lot of fun. So anyway, thanks so much for that. Also want to give a shout out to Open Cape, our First Friday series sponsor. Open Cape, of course, is working on fiber broadband throughout the region. I know Steve Smith is here from Open Cape, so if you have a question, flip him a question in the chat or grab his contact info. And also a big thanks to Cape and Plymouth Business Media, also a series sponsor. Cape and Plymouth Business Media also helps us promote these events to bring people in and get more people aware of the work that we're doing here. And every event, we have Dale Shabigian from Cape and Plymouth Business, who gives us a quick marketing tip, a digital marketing tip. And so Dale, why don't you take it away?
Awesome. Thanks, Bert. Good morning, everyone. And don't worry, I have 18-wheelers driving by my house whenever we start the meeting. I think they're going to pick up the landscaping equipment at your house. So we're in the same boat. Fortunately, I couldn't be at Cape Space today. So marketing tip, I was thinking, I've given away a lot of my best nuggets in the last, it's been 3 or 4 months now, but I was thinking, what do you do when you run out of ideas, right? And that happens to all of us. Well, a really great tactic and something that Google really likes if you're blogging or writing or doing SEO is go back to something that you've done or written in the past and give an update to it, right? So if you wrote something a year or two ago and maybe it's changed a little bit, or maybe it's even still relevant, you can talk about that one thing and say and improve upon it. We call this the skyscraper technique. So if you're writing something, you go back, you make it longer, you make it better. And it also applies to things like a logo or maybe a design of a contract. It can be anything that's customer facing. Go back, make some subtle tweaks, give it a little refresh. Don't worry about always coming up with completely brand new ideas. And that is my marketing tip. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. They're really getting going over here now. So thanks all for being here. If you have questions for Alysia, please drop them in the chat and we will get to them during the course of the presentation. And with that, I would like to take it over, move it over to our program chair, Robin Orbison. Robin.
Thank you, Bert. Good morning, everyone. Um, Dale, that was a great tip. I'm gonna do that today. Actually, I'm gonna dust off some old content and make it and give it a reboot. All right. Well, today it is my pleasure to welcome Alysia Ordway. Alysia is the Career Services Director at a fascinating Boston area company called XR Terra. Good morning, Alysia.
Good morning.
We're delighted to have you with us. And where exactly are you this morning?
I am coming from my home in Hyde Park.
Hyde Park. Okay, terrific. Okay,
Yep.
so we are going to be talking this morning about virtual reality, and I actually think maybe we need to learn some new tech terminology, because I think a lot of us know VR, but you're going to tell us what XR is, and you're going to tell us a little bit about why it's exploding, why we need people to be trained for careers in XR. And we're going to look at some very cool examples. So let's start out by, can you just give us a little bit of a background on yourself? How did you become, how did you find this niche, and what's your role at XR Terra?
Sure. Thank you. Well, first, thank you, Bert, for the invitation, and for Robin for setting me up, and for all of you for joining today. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about XR. How I came to this role and opportunity is somewhat circuitous, but my background is primarily in education and workforce development. I have worked for the City of Boston and the Boston Workforce Board for the majority of my career. And in the most recent phase of that career, we focused intently on an initiative called Tech Hire to expand and diversify the tech talent pipeline and supporting all of the companies in Greater Boston. And it was through that work that I met a number of tech professionals, entrepreneurs, and others. And so, you know, I hit it off.
Are you there?
Sorry. So I hit it off with a few folks, and in fall of 2019, one of those people, our co-founder, Hakan Sataroglu, approached me, and he said, "Alysia, have you been tracking what's happening in XR?" And I had no idea what he was talking about. And I was like, no. I just smiled, and he said, "Well, it's going to impact workforce development, and you really need to get on it." And there was a conference at Boston University to explore these technologies, and there were people from all over the world actually who had come. And as soon as I put on a headset, I realized how transformative this technology could be, not only for workforce development and education, where my background is, but in other fields as well. So I joined the company in January of 2020.
Sorry, I muted myself. Thank you for that introduction. Okay, so I'm going to let you go ahead and start your presentation. And
excellent.
I believe you should have sharing power.
Yes, let me do that now. Okay. Okay, so thank you everyone for being here. As I mentioned, XR Terra is a company that was founded in October of 2019 in Boston. We offered our first class for developers on March 9th of 2020. It was interesting because one student was absent that night. She worked at a university, and it was the first indication, I think, for me that COVID was going to impact things dramatically. And by that Thursday night, we had flipped our class to fully online. So it's been quite a journey over the last year. Interesting, as I mentioned before, I assumed this role in January of 2020. And so I spent a lot of time over the holidays explaining to my family and friends what I was doing. So they'd say, XR Terra, that's really interesting. And I'd say, no, it's not XR Terra, that's the Nissan SUV. And then they'd say virtual reality, like on Zoom. And I said, no, that's still 2D behind a screen. So let me sort of start with providing, for those of you who haven't necessarily waded into this technology, let me just provide a quick primer on what this is. So, XR is really just an umbrella term for all of the different realities. It's, there's augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed or merged reality, Sometimes people have said terms like cross reality, extended reality, and even mediated realities. But whatever, from whatever angle you're looking at this, it's basically the concept that digital content is coming through a phone, a tablet, and now devices that are mounted on our faces. So how do you differentiate across the three elements? If you think about VR, which really had took hold in the gaming industry, this is when you're in a fully immersed synthetic experience. In most cases, your awareness of the environment that you're in is obscured because you're in a digital environment instead. AR is a little bit different in that you are present in the physical world, but digital information is enhancing that experience. And then finally, merged reality, which I think is really exciting, is where the two meet and you're able to interact and manipulate both physical and virtual. PwC did a really excellent report and analysis. Oh, excuse me, wait, I hit that. Whoa. Sorry, screen out of control. There we go, okay. PwC did an excellent report last year called Seeing is Believing, and I emphatically agree that that's the only way to experience these technologies. So I've queued up a few examples to illustrate these. Please let me know in the chat if there are any issues with the sound quality. Stop that there because I think you get a sense of what's going on there. I have no idea what that machine is that the gentleman is operating, but what's fascinating to me here is that gone are the days of looking over your shoulder, perhaps at a technical manual to find out more information about the parts that you're working on. With a click of his fingers, he's able to access detailed information about the components. On the right, you'll notice that there's a video screen where he's getting over-the-shoulder coaching from perhaps a subject matter expert. Next, I'd like to just share with you an example of how VR is being utilized in enterprise. Stop that one there for a second. So even though now with AI and machine learning, Microsoft PowerPoint provides you with a coach, it's still not the same as standing on a stage and having to speak to a live audience. And so as you can imagine, virtual reality is really useful for training, simulations, creating an experience that is hard to replicate in real life. Not that it's hard to replicate having a room full of people, but you wouldn't necessarily do that for your practice runs. Last, I'd just like to share with you an example from Microsoft. Last March, 2 months ago, at its Ignite conference, Microsoft unveiled their new platform and tool, Microsoft Mesh, which really creates a lot of the infrastructure necessary to deliver on these mixed reality experiences. This is somewhat dramatic of a video, but I really like it because for me, it really encapsulates what's possible.
Connection is a spark that gives our lives meaning. It drives us to seek out others who feel the same way.
Okay, why don't you input the data and we'll take a look together. Hey Mari, what you got for me?
To find those who share our views, yet offer different perspectives.
So this next. Look over here.
Challenge us with new ways of seeing.
That I think we should
Deepen our understanding. And enrich our lives.
最后一笔的时候，往前。
Great things happen when we commit to something bigger than ourselves.
Let's take a closer look at it.
place this here. Let's see how we go from there, okay?
This sense of collaboration and the feelings of connection it brings excites us.
Hey, just in time. I'm gonna move it slightly, okay?
It's yours, take it.
We have two planes right now on the same trajectory.
As we put people first, technology fades into the background and feels like anything but.
Aisha, what do you think?
I think if we had 330, maintaining 2800, we'll be clear for approach.
Excellent.
This changes the way we see the world, and in turn, changes the world we see.
These numbers are looking great, actually.
There's promise in the possibilities, and what we see and create next will stretch the imagination.
Good morning, Sarah.
Morning.
Slowly coming towards the thumb.
A world without boundaries.
Good job. A lot better than yesterday.
Yeah.
Excellent. Slowly bring
A world where technology enhances, not limits, humanity. With people front, center, and in the spotlight. The future is here. And here can be anywhere. Introducing Microsoft Mesh.
I love that. Okay, so I just want to say though that well, these technologies are very exciting. It wasn't always this way, and the rate of change has been astonishing in the last few years. But just to give you a sense of where we started, you know, the first VR headset was created by Professor Ivan Sutherland at Harvard back in 1968. And this is where it all began, really, in many respects, with this sort of Damocles headset. So this intimidating contraption was suspended from the ceiling. It displayed computer-generated graphics that changed perspective as you moved around. But as you can see, it's a long way from that Microsoft example, where you had everything from avatars, holograms, manipulation of digital twins. I mean, it's all happening in those examples. So with that, I think I might just pause and just see if there are any questions about those technologies. Robin?
So sorry. I
okay.
Myself. Hi. All right. We got a couple of questions here. A couple of comments about a couple wows. And question: is Microsoft the only one making the lens tool?
No, actually, there are many players in this space. So as you saw, the example where everyone was wearing those headsets, that was the Microsoft HoloLens, which runs, it's pretty expensive. I would say that the audience for that is primarily, enterprise businesses, but there are others in this space. Vario is another example that's making headsets for really sophisticated use. The more you pay, the more nuanced things like eye tracking and fidelity to the actual model you get. Those two headsets, will run upwards of $3,000 and up. I would say in the consumer market, the Oculus Quest 2 is probably the most common example of VR headset. And that is, that will run a couple $100. But then there's also a lot, in your cell phone, with Apple releasing LiDAR technology and tablets and phones. Like it's everywhere.
Okay, all right. So Alysia, the questions are flying in. So I'm thinking maybe we let you get through your presentation and take all the questions at the end, because I think otherwise we won't get there.
Okay, all right. Very good.
I'll let you finish.
Okay, we'll do. Okay, so why are these technologies really taking off now? There's this outline actually I took from a book that I recommend for everyone. It's called Reality Check, and it's authored by Jeremy Dalton, who leads the AR and VR team at PricewaterhouseCoopers in the UK. But really, he boils it down to a number of key factors. So everything from the decreasing costs for storage, computing power, connectivity, an increase in investments. A couple of milestones that really stand out were the 2012 Kickstarter campaign for the Oculus Rift. That received tons more than what he initially had asked for, and that got the attention of Facebook, which ultimately bought the company 2 years later for $3 billion. Once Facebook made that commitment, the investments started rolling in. In 2012 through 2019, $17 billion of global VC money started to go towards companies. Large multinational corporations like HP, Google, Intel, Apple, they started eating up startups, and that market was evaluated at about $45 billion at the end of 2019. And also alongside all this investment we've observed an increase in academic research. So for example, in 2000, there were 600 papers written about VR and 50 about AR. Fast forward to 2016, and there are twice as many VR papers, and granted it was a low number, but 15 times more papers written about AR. And then when you look at 2016, after that Facebook acquisition, the curve just goes straight up. It's a doubling over time. So, and the momentum continues. So even within the last month, we've heard data about a fifth of Facebook employees are working on AR and VR. So that's 10,000 people in the Reality Labs division. You've got Apple working behind the scenes on patents. Everyone is eagerly awaiting whatever it is that Apple's going to do around augmented reality and glasses. And I think one real attention-grabbing headline from last month was when Microsoft won a $21.9 billion contract to outfit the Army with HoloLenses. So just to summarize, this is the PwC report that I had mentioned, Seeing is Believing. This was a collaboration of PwC's business and economics team with the technology, the AR and VR technology team, and they did a deep analysis to figure out, really what is the potential impact of these technologies. And they're sizing the market for, and again, this was pre-COVID. This report was released last winter before things really settled in. They were projecting a $200 billion market size globally by 2022 and a GDP boost of, up in the inwards of the trillions by 2030. Many people would argue that those numbers could stand to be revised in light of the acceleration that COVID had on adoption of these technologies. And it continues. So I mentioned that Microsoft Mesh is the platform upon which these technologies are built, but I should say that Unity and Unreal Engine are the vehicles that knit together what you see here, the haptics, all of that. That's the platform for building experiences that then could potentially sit on a Microsoft Mesh platform. So Microsoft would take care of things like user identity, authentication, a lot of the infrastructure, cloud, etc. Keep going. This slide, I apologize, I know it's a little bit hard sometimes to see these things online, but if you take a look, this gives you a sense of which industries are significantly investing. As I said earlier, the power of virtual reality and augmented reality is the ability to replicate things that are very expensive and difficult to simulate. And so it's probably not surprising that manufacturing and construction, asset-rich industries, are investing significantly in this technology. PTC, Boston-based company, really a leader in developing these technologies for manufacturing. You see examples now of construction companies that leverage this technology, where you can walk a client through a space projecting what will ultimately be built there before you start bringing the equipment and getting the team there and setting things up. So if a client doesn't like, I don't know, how the view is occluded or something like that, you can make changes in real time to your drawings and plans and avoid those cost overruns and corrections later. But right behind that, you see other sectors like communications, media, entertainment, professional services, retail, the ones that you would expect, I believe, to make these kinds of investments. So just to sort of summarize, there's a lot of different ways that these technologies can be used. As I mentioned, with the construction and architecture design, architecture examples, your design, your production of products or buildings are all leveraging these technologies. Automotive actually is another industry that's really embraced the use of this technology. It enables collaboration, as you saw in the Microsoft example, collaboration, communication, but also there's clearly a lot of opportunity to entertain and educate folks. And then I think also practicing, there's a lot that can be done there with these technologies. So when you look at specific, I noticed that on the call we have folks from all of these sectors to some extent, and there's really novel applications taking place. Like if you look at healthcare around hands-free information, same as the gentleman working on the machine, well, same is true for doctors working on people. And I've seen examples like from Philips, where they have surgeons who wear a HoloLens or other device and are able to pop up in front of them a couple of digital screens where they can look at the tests and whatnot about the patient that is before them. And now they're not looking away from the patient, but with just a nod of their head, a slight turn of the head, they're able to get more information about that person that they're working on. Also, you saw this a little bit in the mechanic manufacturing example, but you can access experts in real time and you're both looking at the same thing. Also in that Microsoft example, you saw the young lady with the hand injury, and her physician is now projected into her living room. And also he was looking at data from the real-time experience of how she's been, rehabilitating that wrist. So another use case, just my background in education, that I think is really compelling is how you can make abstract concepts become real for people. We have an advisor who works at Biogen in Cambridge, and he was an early employee. He was an early adopter of XR and added a real value to their team because he was able to take very complex data and now project it in a way that the scientists and others were able to interact with the data, and everyone could see abstract concepts and see what the others were seeing, and they could talk about it in real time. I'm going to skip this one. So, what this means, though, is that there's a huge demand for talent. this is a technology that's really taken off quickly. As I said, most of the people who I've been talking to in the fields really got into it around 2017, which is not that many years when you're looking for a workforce. So this is data from the 2019 hired software engineering report. Now, granted, AR, VR engineer had a low denominator from which they were starting, but 1,400% growth is pretty significant, and it does not show signs of slowing down. While there are also new jobs that are being created, this technology will be infused in existing roles, and it's going to change the way that people work. So you'll see here in 2019, a low number of people in the millions. This is 0.82. Just under 1 million people were utilizing this technology, and now it's a steady increase that we're looking at within a matter of less than a decade at 23 million plus. So just following Robin's cue, I guess I'll keep going and just get close here to the wrap up. But what I would say is what we're doing at XR Terra to support the growth of this industry is offering intensive boot camps to support people who are looking to learn these technologies. With anything, there's lots of information available online. Unity, the platform, offers a lot under their Unity Learn, but there's something really nice about learning in community, and so we're doing that. We've been doing it for over a year, and we have about 130 people who've come through our programming to date. And one of the things that I'm happy to say is that we also partnered with Benjamin Franklin early on so that individuals could get credit, whether you're in school and you are looking to get credit to add to your transcript, or if you're a professional and your employer only reimburses for credits, that is an option for people. And what we found over the last year is that there's so much interest, but not necessarily everyone is a designer or a developer ready to go. And so starting next month, we will be offering introductory boot camps for people. And I'm just going to end with some examples of what students have been able to put together after 12 weeks, which is, I think it's pretty exciting, just to see how quickly people are able to create. So to simulate the work environment, we have students work in teams. This was from our developer class. We had an industry partner ask students to come up with examples of how they might run an auto showroom in VR. So what's cool is that there are assets that you can pull down for free, so you don't have to build every single piece. Some of this is original work. Some of it is just like the cars. They just pulled examples. And we're able to create all kinds of things. But here you see in virtual reality the ability to change the color of a car with a flick of the wrist. For design students, there's even less coding involved. But again, it's thinking about user experience and how all of these pieces get put together. I think I mentioned earlier, retail and consumer goods is a hot market for these things. And this is an example of students that they did for sneakers. So I'm going to stop that and just go on to say that what's really been exciting as a newcomer to this space is that people are very generous around sharing their expertise. And there are lots of ways to learn. So VRARA is a global association of people who are interested in AR and VR. AWE is Augmented World, and they do an amazing conference and have a really a regular newsletter. And just getting local, hyper local, the Boston VR Meetup group is among the largest in the world, actually. We are constantly vying with New York City for the most members. It kind of goes back and forth. And this is just a copy of that Jeremy Dalton book that I highly recommend if this is something that you're interested in. And so with that, I think I'll stop and just say, again, thank you for listening and your interest. And there's my contact information. If there's any way that I can be helpful, for being a resource, or if you have questions, please feel free to reach out.
All right, Alysia, thank you. That was a very exciting presentation. And I can see we've got a lot of engaged audience members here. I'd like to point out that, we have a number of educators on the call here today, including, we mentioned that we have some students from the Cape Cod Community College. We actually have the president of Cape Cod Community College online with us this morning.
Oh, awesome.
And we also, I'm going to start with a question we're getting from our friend Mark Roque, who is a teacher at the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School. And he is asking a question: what skills need to be incorporated into high school curriculum to prepare students for work or further study in this area?
Sure. So I think I mentioned at the beginning that my background is in career pathway development. And so last summer we did do a pilot with high school students just to see how that would go. And I think, as with anything, you can provide a lot of scaffolding to get people started. I would say that both Unity and Epic Games have, they're really interested. There's interested from the business side, but also from the user side. Obviously, students have access to these technologies through video games, their phones and whatnot. So there's a lot of awareness out there. And those two businesses have put a lot of resources for educators on their online platform. So I recommend checking those out. And in terms of skill building, what we learned last summer was that you don't need to necessarily know how to code, but the more that you know how to code, the more you can do with the technology. And so with Unity, C# is the language that you'd want to know. But really, and especially as I work with people now who are trying to break into the field, the skills that you need are really, there are a lot of foundational things. Like on the design side, do you understand design thinking? Can you think through and create experiences that are well-informed and frictionless and good for the user? And also on the visual side, do you have a sense of color and space? And are you able to do that? On the developer side, it's the same sort of things. How effective are you at problem solving and using available resources? Some of the developers that I work with, they laugh because they're like, being a developer is just knowing how to use Google like 80% of the time when you get stumped. So, but it takes a lot of persistence. In these kinds of technologies, where they're evolving and they're changing and there are updates all the time. It's almost like you just have to have the discipline of working through a checklist and just checking, did I do this? Did I do that? Why is it broken? It could be these 5 things. Did I go over them? And then knowing when to reach out for help.
And Alysia, are these skills that are taught in your training program, or are these more prerequisites that you're hoping people come with?
That's a great question. So over the last year, we have calibrated, I think, to get to the right level of where people need to be for our core programs. These are the 12-week intensive boot camps, where it's too intense and it's too much to start at square one. And that's why we offered these intro classes. So for example, the 4-week intro to VR that we're offering next month, that's a place where like I could start and just learn how to piece things together. Because as I said, you can scaffold it enough so that you don't have to build out all the components necessarily. You just have to learn how they get put together. But in terms of the developer program, really you need to have a year at least of coding and development software, computer science foundational skills so that you're comfortable. And so we've had students, again, as I said, it's been a year of learning how to calibrate. We've had students who were sophomores, computer science sophomores at Wentworth, be really successful. I would say that's probably the lowest level of like earliest skill development. And then we've had everyone all the way through, mid-career professionals take the classes.
And it looks like, so can you just comment on what, how XTerra, what happens after they complete your program? Do you work with these students to help them find jobs? What's their path for that?
Yeah, so again, in many respects, this is a new skill set that people are weaving into their career journey. And so the next step really depends on the person. But I talk about the career services theory of action being about, like, you'll appreciate this, the 4 C's. but it's about connection, the curriculum, your collateral, and context. So, you know, through the class curriculum, people are building skills through networking experiences that we provide both during and after the class. We're helping people forge those connections so that they know people in the field. Believe it or not, it's a pretty small field at this point. I feel like every time I talk to someone, they know another person that I know, and it's definitely a tight community. But then also just context. We're always trying to help people understand, like what, you know, like with Microsoft coming out with Mesh last month, trying to keep people continuously involved. So we have like almost like a job club. We partner with MentorWorks so that we have a career job search curriculum that's readily available, and we're trying to showcase what people can do.
Okay, so we're getting a this is a real basic question for you. We got a question. How hard is it to make a VR game?
Well, you know, I think
do you need a year of coding and 12 weeks of XR training, or can
No, I think there are gameplay interactions that people can do, and it all depends upon your motivation and your willingness to use available resources online. So people have come to us and they've messed around and created really basic games. But yeah, I would say, like maybe you saw in our student example, it was called The Haunted Jaunt, and it was a character kind of running through a maze. You know, that's something students did in our class. That was like one of the learning modules up front that they did in like a week. You know, so again, it depends on whether or not you're using these existing resources and knitting them together.
Okay. So here's a completely different question. Can you comment on diversity, equity, and inclusion and this technology for individuals with varying learning styles and capabilities?
Sure. So I would say that there's something called the XR Safety Initiative, which is a global effort to ensure that, as often I say, like the next realities are inclusive and accessible for everyone. There's definitely, I would say, an awareness among the community that there's an opportunity to, because you're designing so much that it needs to be designed by and for a range of perspectives. So narrowly in that vein, you know, we started with we have a number of scholarships available. So we have Women in Tech, Black Creators scholarships, that because we want to signal that this is a place for everyone. And I would say that there are also a lot of initiatives additionally. So Verizon, for example, has a lot about, is doing a lot through their VR labs to ensure that, you know, whether it's folks who are deaf or blind, that there's a way to access these technologies.
As a follow-up to that, can you just talk a little bit about what your classrooms look like? Who are the students that you're seeing come through? Are they really young? Are they right out of school? Are they people in the middle of their careers looking to make a shift?
Yes, yes, and yes. So I would say our, you know, as I said, it's about 125, 130 students who have come through. I would say about a third are college students, because they've been exposed to the technology but haven't had a chance to really get their hands dirty and tinker. And so this is a way for them to do that and develop portfolio pieces that they can take away. We also have a handful of early career folks who see this as a way to differentiate themselves in the labor force. And then I would say there are people who are, you know, established in their career and have been waiting for this technology to come to a maturity where it's viable and useful for them and whatever it is that they're doing, whether they're product designers, engineers, etc.
Do you see most of them being driven by their own career goals as opposed to companies sending their employees because they want them to learn this skill?
Because that's an interesting question. I would say that in the last couple of cohorts, we've started to get people who were referred by their employers. I would say 80% of the people that we've served, though, it was individual interest.
Okay. All right, we have a question here. Actually, Kathleen Clark, I see a couple of questions from you in the chat, and I'm not sure I completely understand the question. So I'm just going to ask you if you can unmute yourself. You have a question about balance of accessibility. Can you unmute and ask your question?
Yes, so my question was, because the field is developing so quickly and because everybody's really excited about this technology, are there any efforts to make sure that we don't lose the human element that we've been working with traditionally in the workforce for a very long time now, while also bringing in this new technology and basically using it responsibly and intelligently so that it doesn't end up overtaking traditional methods of thinking and working with other people in favor of a new technology just because of the novelty of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that I wrestle with as well. And it's funny, before I took this job, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, but it's coming. And so I want to be there when as it evolves. So I think, if you talk, some people would say, oh, this is going to centralize jobs and it's going to displace people, and it's possible. But at the same time, a lot of new opportunities are going to emerge. I think in general, it's a very social technology because it does get you out from behind the computer. And I would say that even my own experience, like AltSpace is like a platform that Microsoft owns, and you can go on to AltSpace and just visit and go to events. And it's amazing, like how social this technology can be and how it's such a different, like I know, having worked remotely from home for the last year and getting Zoom fatigue, I've then gone into AltSpace and gotten energized because you have presence with people in a way that's different. In terms of the human element, I would say that we have a lot of students who are coming from HCI, human-centered interactions, human-computer interactions, all those different programs. There's definitely a lot of people who are studying that. And then I would recommend checking out the XR Safety Initiative, because that's also a group that's really trying to be mindful about how these are created. Oh, and one other resource is Virtual World Society, that's really looking at an intergenerational strategy for utilizing these technologies.
So that, thank you. Alysia, so we got several questions here that are asking for links and information to some of the resources you've mentioned. I'm just going to suggest, would it be possible for you to put a list of those together for us afterwards, and we'll send them out to everyone, including the one you just mentioned. Terrific.
Okay.
All right, we're going to take a couple of more questions here. We get a good one here from Rich. Rich is in charge of coming up with really good questions. With all the discussions around the cost of going to college, do you see this industry reshaping the educational path?
Yes, I do. And because, so as an example, for like an immediate thing that comes to mind for me is like vocational education. And that this was my world prior to coming to this, but you had to, schools and districts would respond to RFPs to get technology in their schools, but oftentimes the technology is changing so quickly that as soon as you get stuff a couple of years later, it's outdated. What this would enable people to do is create a simulated vocational instructional place, right? So you could teach CNC machining virtually, work on the muscle memory and just awareness, and then eventually you could transition someone to learning on the machine, but you can get a lot done by doing it with virtual tools. And as the technology advances, they're even talking now about like the haptics, so the experience of your hands and whatnot, like you get haptic feedback. So it's pretty sophisticated stuff. So that could change things a lot as well. But really what's cool is you can drop anything into your immediate space.
Okay, all right, and we're going to take two more. So the next one is from Steve. And so Steve's question is, what are the projections for impacts and enhancements of remote work, since the remote work has become the phenomenon of the 2020s?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you saw in that video, and this has also happened with, I know, a lot of film production and things like that. You know, people are collaborating globally without having to be in the same space. You're able to share files. You're able to be in the same space. People talk about, I've heard examples of, and I don't know how I feel about this, but you could have the conference room table right there in your kitchen, and you could be interacting with your colleague's hologram. You know, so there's a lot there that you could be doing.
Okay, and that's a good segue into the last question I'm going to take here, which is how soon is this technology going to be available to the general public? That's the question from the audience, and I'm going to enhance that question by saying not just available but affordable to the general public.
Sure. So it's here now. If you have a smartphone, you have access to it. So there are things like Warby Parker eyeglasses. You can try on different sets of eyeglasses with your phone and not have to go to the store and not have them send 5 different ones to your house. You can literally augment what you see with the eyeglasses. There are a host of like retail companies, right? Like IKEA, where you can drop a piece of furniture in your living room and decide how you feel about it. Even if you measured, like maybe you didn't like, you know, but once you see it, it's a different experience. So that is available now. I would also say, you know, the Oculus Quest 2 headset, you know, sells for a couple $100, and they were sold out last year. In fact, there was such pent up demand, and because of the pandemic interrupting supply chain and manufacturing processes, you couldn't get your hands on one until late spring, early summer, and then they released a new one in the fall. And these are just, you know, they were in demand over the holidays. So I would say, you know, it's coming. For me, it struck home when I turned on the Celtics for the beginning of this season, and Oculus was a sponsor with their name on the parquet at TD Bank or TD Garden, whatever it's called. Yeah.
And how far away are we from having a holodeck like Captain Picard had?
Well, those holograms, I mean, I don't know about Captain Picard holodeck, but, you know, it's possible. Volumetric screen capture, volumetric capture is a thing. And it's just a matter of time as this cost of computing and speed and capacity increase, it'll be more available. But those examples that were in the Microsoft video, I mean, they were a little fuzzy, but like that technology is available now, depending upon how many sensors and cameras you use.
Okay, great. All right, Alysia, is there anything else that you'd like us to know about XR or XR Terra before we wrap it up?
Yeah, you know, it's exciting, and there's just a whole lot happening, and I encourage folks to, you know, check it out. Like I said, if you're really excited and you want to go in deep, this book is really good. I know Virtual and Augmented Reality, and I'm reading it as a paper book, but I'm kind of old school. Sometimes I like to take my eyes off the screen. But the book's really good. Or trying, you know, joining a meetup. I think once, you know, once things settle down and we're out of this pandemic era, there's all kinds of, like with these meetups, you can actually go and try on headsets and things like that. So check it out. And again, I'm available if anybody has any questions. Oh, and I would say one more thing. If anybody's interested in taking the class, we'll offer a Cape Cod Technology Council discount as well. I'll make sure to add that.
Ah, well, thank you. That is outstanding. All right. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Alysia. It's been a pleasure. And I'm going to turn it back over to Bert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Alysia, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. Can't wait to get a little bit deeper into this as we go forward. It's amazing what cheap computing power will do as we grow. So again, thank you very much, Robin. Thanks for another wonderful moderation session. And thanks to all of you for being here. And just a reminder for our annual meeting that is next week, that is open to everybody. However, for the voting section, you do have to be a member to vote. So this would be a good time to join the Tech Council if you're not already a member, so you can have a voice in our upcoming elections. So thank you all, everybody. We look forward to seeing you next time, and hope you enjoy your weekend. Take care, everybody.